Welcome, everyone, and good evening. All of us joining you tonight are in Spain at the moment, so it's already vermouth time on this balmy summer evening. I will wait a couple more minutes for people to be joining us from the main stage as that is ending. And to get us started, I will share a few words about the Torre Barra Mediterranean Center. So I'm Anne McBride, the Deputy Director of the Torre Barra Mediterranean Center, which is a joint project of the University of Barcelona and the Culinary Institute of America. Through industry leadership programs like our upcoming Tomorrow Tastes Mediterranean digital magazine and conference, and educational projects that range from a future Mediterranean master's degree and concentration for CIA students to the design of a sustainable nutrition module for Feed the Planet. We focus on translating research-based evidence into culinary practice for healthier, more sustainable, more delicious Mediterranean-influenced menus and food products for the future. You'll be able to hear more about TMC at our expo booth this week and several other weeks during Menus of Change. And today I am joined by two members of our advisory councils to talk about the Mediterranean as a model, health, sustainability, and food culture. The Mediterranean diet received the landmark UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage designation 10 years ago. Since 2010, the scientific case for its value as a healthy dietary pattern has only strengthened. For example, with the results of the PREDIMED study and hundreds of other global research studies. And now we have growing evidence, including the Keysun study released by the University of Navarra in 2019, that it is also one of the world's most sustainable ways of eating. But what does the Mediterranean diet mean in 2020 for American chefs and their customers, or chefs anywhere outside of the Mediterranean? Today, you will hear some of the science behind the Mediterranean diet principles, including on olive oil and Sofrito, and concrete examples of how to create menus that blend sustainability, health, and irresistible flavor with a clear sense of Mediterranean food culture. We will have two presentations and then we'll have time for questions at the end. So please put your questions in the chat at any point. We will also then continue the discussion in the TMC booth during the expo. So you can join us there if you don't get to ask your question during this. And at any point, you can double click on one of the windows that you see and it will maximize that window on your screen. So without further ado, to get us started, it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Rosa Lamuela-Raventós, who is the director of the Institute for Research on Nutrition and Food Safety at the University of Barcelona, and a full professor in the Department of Nutrition, Food Science, and Gastronomy from the School of Pharmacy and Food Science, also at the University of Barcelona. Rosa is the principal investigator of the research group Natural Antioxidants, Polyphenols, and leads one of the CyberOBN's investigation groups. Welcome, Rosa.
Hello, thank you.
So without further ado, I will let you get started with your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, hello to everyone. Well, first of all, I would like to thank especially to the Culinary Institute of America, to the Mediterranean Center, and also to Dr. Anne McBride and Santi Mas de Sachas for having invited me to participate in this interesting session. And I would like, and today, I would like to focus on the effect of olive oil as a health ingredient, as a key ingredient in the kitchen. I will focus more on the science part of the effect of the virgin olive oil inside the kitchen. Next slide, please. Well, olive oil is a key ingredient of the Mediterranean diet. It has been used for many years. And nowadays, next slide, please. Nowadays, extra virgin olive oil have two health claims. It's very difficult to have a health claim. You have to have a lot of science after a food to really have a health claim. And extra virgin olive oil have two, one from the United States, from the Food and Drug Administration, according to the lipid profile of this virgin olive oil, another that is from Europe, from EFSA, and it's because it has a high level of antioxidants, of polyphenols, and these polyphenols are very interesting for their health property, especially on cardiovascular disease. Next slide. However, when we talk about olive oil, usually we talk about olive oil for dressing. We need more research about what is the effect of olive oil in the kitchen, and we have focused our research on evaluating the effect of cooking with extra virgin olive oil. Next slide. Yes, we have done a research, it has been published just recently in 2020, and what we have observed is that if we use an extra virgin olive oil that is very rich in antioxidants, we can use it for cooking, and it still maintains a level of antioxidants, a level of phenols that keep fulfilling the parameters stated as healthy by the European Union. Next slide. However, what is very important for us is what is the effect of olive oil in other ingredients. And we have focused for studying that to evaluate the effect of virgin olive oil in another ingredients in a Mediterranean sofrito. For this, what we initially studied is sofrito is a typical sauce that is used in the Mediterranean diet, and its main component is tomato. However, it has another ingredients, as for example, as onion, garlic, and it's usually cooked with extra virgin olive oil. So for doing our first design, next slide, what we did is we go to Barcelona market and we bought all the available sofritos that were in the market, because we wanted to evaluate what was the effect of using different ingredients in the bioactive of this food. Next slide. Yes, and what we observed, analyzing sofritos from the market, what we observed is that the ingredients inside the sofrito were very important for the bioactive compounds present in the sofrito and for the antioxidant capacity of this sauce. For example, we observed that using extra virgin olive oil and onion increased the antioxidants levels of this sauce. However, when this sofrito was made with sunflower oil, the bioactive compounds decrease and the antioxidant activity also decrease. Next slide. However, we wanted to investigate by ourselves which were the best conditions, which were the best ingredients. So what we did is a factorial design to optimize which variables and which conditions the olive oil contain, the sofrito containing more antioxidants. For this, what we did is we studied different amount of onions, different amount of virgin olive oil, different amount of garlic, and also we studied at different times, at 30 and 60 minutes. And what we observed in the next slide, and curiously, our results, what we observed is that there was a synergistic effect between olive oil, onion, and tomato. So when we mix these ingredients, there was more, what we observed is that the antioxidants that were in the sauce increased its bioavailability. It were more bioavailable, its capacity of absorption increased. This was very interesting because there was a synergistic effect of different components that are key ingredients on the Mediterranean diet. However, we wanted to do more research and to see what was the effect of this sauce in biology. We started, in that case, with animals models. Next slide. And we started with sucker rats, and for that we used two different rats, one that were lean and the other that were obese. And what we study is the effect of sofrito in vascular function. If you can see in the figure that there is a black bar. In the black bar is the rat that is having a controlled diet plus sofrito. And curiously, what we observe is that the obese rat, when she was having sofrito, was behaving in vascular function as a lean rat. So it improves the vascular function and it improves like the cardiovascular effects. However, we wanted to explore more, and in the next slide, what was very curious is that if we observe in the right, here we have again the obese rats that have had Sofrito. And what for us was very curious is that the obese rat, if we look, the obese rat and the obese control rats have the same weight, they have the weight the same. However, when we look how many calories they were having, obese rat with Sofrito were having more calories. They were ingesting more food because they were having Sofrito plus their usual diet. However, they did not have an increase in body weight. So Sofrito seems to have an energy expenditure. It increased the calories expenditure when it's used as you add to a regular diet. We wanted to continue this study, but in that case with humans. Next slide. And we did a study with 20 volunteers. They were young volunteers. In that case, they were men. We have studies with men, with women. These were volunteers that were only men. And what we did is we give to all of them Sofrito in one morning. We give them 240 grams per 70 kilos of weight of their weight. And next day, they have to come again in the lab. And what we observe is that at the next day, they were coming in the lab and we took blood samples and urine samples. And what we observed the next day is that there was increase in antioxidants, in carotenoids, that are compounds that are present in tomato, mainly, especially lycopene. And this increase in carotenoids in plasma was correlated with a decrease in inflammatory parameters. So they were having more health effects. And this also was correlated with an increase in polyphenols levels in urine. So only having Sofrito once at a time, they were having good effects in health, people that are healthy. Next slide. However, we wanted to really evaluate what was the effect of this key ingredient that is olive oil. And for that, we did a nutritional study with 40 healthy persons. It was a prospective randomized crossover open controlled design. And with these 40 volunteers, they were having 3 food products. One that is raw tomato, then another one that is tomato sauce, and the other one that is tomato sauce, but with olive added. And we were taking from them urine samples and blood samples. And what were the results of these? Next slides. What we observed, curiously, this course will be the course that we observe on the plasma of the bioactive compounds, in the case were polyphenols. What we observe is when we add olive oil to these sauces, these compounds remain longer for more time in blood. That they are maintained in the body more time. If we look at the next results, that would be the results in next slide, that would be the results in urine. Here are the results in urine for men, women, and total. In yellow, there are the tomato sauce with olive oil. In orange, tomato sauce without olive oil, and in red, tomato. And what we observe in the yellow one, that is the tomato sauce with olive oil, the levels are higher. Why? Because these compounds were longer, they were better absorbed when there is olive oil, and they are during more time excreted in urine. But when one can think, well, this is interesting because you have antioxidants in your body, but this has any implication on health? And let's see what happens. Next slide. This is what happens with inflammatory markers. Again, we have in red raw tomato, in orange tomato sauce without olive oil, and in yellow will be with olive oil. We can see, I will not focus in each of these parameters, but in any case, we see whenever is yellow, is always the effect is higher. So there is more anti-inflammatory effect. And we have to think that we are comparing three foods that are very healthy, no? Tomato, tomato sauce, and tomato sauce with olive oil. In any of the three, we observe beneficial effects, but however, these effects were higher when we added virgin olive oil. Next slide. Well, what could be the takeaway message, no? That the presence of extra virgin olive oil enhances the viability of bioactive compounds from other foods, like tomato, in that case. And the tomato sofrito made with extra virgin olive oil has shown the ability to improve the vascular function and the weight in animal models, and to decrease inflammatory status in healthy individuals. Next slide. Well, I would like to thank, because all this research is done because we have many people working in the lab, that they are really very active, and I would like to thank all of them because they are very active participating in these research projects. And finally, to end, I would like to thank all of you for listening to me in this interesting.
Thank you so much, and we may not have time for questions during this session, but as I have said before, we will be all together again in the Torre Barra Mediterranean Center booth during the break. So if you have questions for Rosa and for Teresa, who's coming up, and we don't get to address them here, please join us in the booth afterwards. Rosa will now take you off the screen. Okay. And welcome, Teresa. So Teresa will also talk about Sofrito with a culinary perspective, and connecting the science to the food part, which I know a lot of you are here for. Teresa Gutierrez is the chef owner of Azafrán, located in the heart of Spain's La Mancha region, where all of her restaurant staff are women, both front and back of the house. Teresa focuses on regional cooking with local ingredients, and she gives great importance to the union of cooking savory meal with and maintaining the raw properties of the food to create a well-balanced diet. Her restaurant currently holds a Michelin Bib Gourmand and a Sol Repsol from the Repsol Guide. And she's joining us from the kitchen. Bienvenida.
Hello, Anne. Thank you. Hello, I'm Teresa Gutierrez. I am a chef. And it's my pleasure to be one of the presenters in Menus of Chain, talking about our wonderful Mediterranean diet, especially because I was born, I grew up, and I live in one of the most beautiful Mediterranean countries, Spain. Thank you, Rosa, for your presentation. For me as a chef, it's wonderful to learn from great professionals like you are. And very big thanks to Anne and Santi for giving me the opportunity to share my work at this Congress. Next slide, please. Mediterranean diet is a generic term based on the traditional eating habits in the 16 countries bordering the Mediterranean Sea. Eating styles vary among these countries and even among regions within each country because of different in culture, ethnic background, religion, economy, geography, and agricultural production. There isn't one standard Mediterranean diet. However, there are some common factors. Plenty of fruits, vegetables, bread and other grains, potatoes, beans, nuts and seeds, olive oil as a primary fat source, dairy products, eggs, fish and poultry in low to moderate amounts. I come from La Mancha, in the heart of Spain, and one of the most representative dishes of Mediterranean diet in my region is pisto manchego. This dish is divided in two parts: sofrito, tomatoes, onion, extra virgin olive oil and salt, and vegetables, zucchini, green pepper, and squash in small pieces. Next slide, please. As Rosa has said, Sofrito is a traditional Spanish vegetables base that is a foundation for many other dishes. It has a long history, and different cuisines have their own variation of sofrito, but extra virgin olive oil and tomatoes are essential ingredients in any Mediterranean sofrito. The traditional Spanish version includes tomatoes, onion, garlic, and extra virgin olive oil, and the elevated flavors of sofrito are the result of the way the ingredients are prepared. Sofrito is not only delicious, but also nutrient-packed and includes Mediterranean diet ingredients that improve your health. Next slide, please. And now I'm going to show you how to cook a perfect sofrito. This is my recipe, 100 milliliters extra virgin olive oil, 350 grains of onion chopped in small pieces, 30 grains of garlic. I always use local purple garlic, 1,500 grains of tomatoes. It's very important to use plum tomatoes. This is, they have a cylindrical shape, a generally higher solid content, and few seeds, and making them more suitable for processing and making sauce like the Spanish sofrito. Next slide, please. First part, chop onion and garlic and cook them in extra virgin olive oil on slow heat. It's very important that onion becomes caramelized, but not too much. If it turns brown color, the result could be bitter. With a golden caramelized, flavor becomes sweet and reduce the acidity of the tomato in final recipe. If you cook onions like this, the final result is wonderful. Next slide, please. Then add chopped fresh tomatoes. I always use tomatoes with peel and seeds. Eating the whole tomatoes is the best way to get all their properties. Fresh tomatoes are key ingredient in the recipe. Never use canned tomatoes. And very important, cook them until all their water evaporates. Triturate the sofrito to obtain a softer and more delicate texture. And finally, we have a tomato paste with caramelized onion and garlic, full of delicious flavor. Next slide, please. The second part of is the vegetables. We have zucchini, green pepper, and squash in small pieces. Next slide, please. And how to cook the vegetables. We need 2 pans. First pan with extra virgin olive oil, and second pan with vegetables. When the oil is at 160 degrees centigrade temperature, cover the vegetables with the hot oil and cook them for about 5 minutes. Then strain the oil, spread the vegetables on a tray, and cool them quickly to stop the cooking. In this way, we are able to seal the surface of the vegetables with the hot oil without losing the water inside. They will be crispy, full of color and vitamins. Next slide, please. In my restaurant, we serve this pisto manchego with these other ingredients. A whole grains. Next slide, please. I think. Okay. In my restaurant, we serve this pisto manchego with these other ingredients: a whole grains, nuts, and seeds bread, marinated anchovy. Anchovy is a small blue fish full of omega-3 acids, and saffron mayonnaise, made with eggs, milk, olive oil, and La Mancha saffron. Saffron is one of the most important spices in some Mediterranean countries, especially the saffron grown in my region, La Mancha, has culinary properties that make it unique. Its aroma, color, and flavor are much more powerful and elegant than other saffron. And finally, this is the result. Next slide, please. If you accompany this dish with a glass of red wine and a fresh fruit dessert, you are eating all the good properties of the Mediterranean diet. And next slide. Thank you very much for your attention, and eat Mediterranean.
Great. Thank you so much, Teresa. Tengo hambre ahora. I'm hungry. I hope that all of you are too, and will do that. Let me bring back Rosa also. We have time for a couple of questions if anyone wants to type them into the chat. And if I'll give you a second to do that. If not, I have a question for Teresa first. So how do you communicate messages of health and nutrition to your customers? And do they want to hear that, or do they just want to eat?
I love this question. When people come to my restaurant, they come to relax and enjoy. And I'm sure most of them don't want to hear health messages at that time, because I am not a chef, I'm not a doctor. I believe that my obligation as a chef is to transmit this knowledge through the dishes and the way I cook them. In my restaurant, we serve traditional recipes from La Mancha, and our traditional recipes had too many calories because people used to work in the fields and needed to have enough energy for their long days at work. And my work philosophy is to cook those traditional and delicious dishes full of flavor, but with less calories, much healthier and suitable for any restaurant table. This is the reason I study nutrition and health. Somehow I send these health messages through the way I cook.
Mm-hmm. Great. And Rosa, are there other vegetables, any other vegetable oils that have the beneficial, or at least approach the beneficial properties of extra virgin olive oil?
Well, the virgin olive oil is, I think, the oil that has many studies that demonstrate their health property. And one thing that is very good of extra virgin olive oil is that it's a juice of a fruit. So you only have to press it. You don't have to do any treatment that usually, for example, other oils needs to finally to consume. So this is good because it maintains all the properties also of the fruit. For this reason, it's so rich in antioxidants, no? And it's for me, it's one of the most interesting fats that you have available in the market.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And as until tomorrow, resident of Spain, I've definitely eaten my fair share of olive oil, and I will miss the wide availability of high quality oil at a great price here, for sure. Before we're getting our 1 minute warning, so I want to talk about the key elements of the Mediterranean diet, and also want to talk about how to adapt the Mediterranean diet outside of the Mediterranean, and this aspect of bringing other cultures into the Mediterranean. So I suggest that we do that during the break, in the continuation of our conversation. But if one of you has a quick word for the people who are here to that, on what is the one thing about the Mediterranean diet that you wish people understood and retained? La cosa más importante que los gentes necesitan memoriar del Mediterranean diet.
I did say something? And
yes, please.
Yes. Okay, I think, one of the key things is especially virgin olive oil, but usually we eat also a lot of vegetables, and we have lost, but traditionally with a lot of legumes. And we usually use as saffron or saffron, other species that in Mediterranean, we have a lot of species that I think are very important for the traditional Mediterranean diet, because all of these foods are very rich in antioxidants, are very healthy.
Y Teresa, tu respuesta en la sala del TMC durante la pausa, porque necesitamos salir ahora.
Vale.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Teresa and Rosa, and see you in a few minutes in the TMC booth. Santi has put the link in the chat, so you can click there and join us. We will continue the conversation, and I'll see you there. The networking break will also allow you to network and do other things. So see you shortly.